Let's start by getting your definition of this child well-being. What does that mean to you?
Well, I connect with the definition that we've really circled around for the last couple of days, that well-being is displayed in a child when they are appropriately meeting different developmental milestones of along the life continuum, that they have everything they need to become successful adults. Some of that's internal resiliency, some of that's appropriate external secure attachment to adults and others. And then the last thing I really like most is that the child can actually enjoy childhood. That means that they have appropriate relationships, they can connect with their peers, with adults, and with the community in ways that are fulfilling for them from their own perspective, but then also appropriate as we look at them as children.
Okay, so who are we talking about here? Who should be paying attention to this?
Everyone. So one of the things that we affirmed over the last couple of days is that, number one, every child has a right to well-being. That is something significant for us to say as a region. Quite frankly, we've not said it as a nation. So that's something that we affirm, that they have that right and that it's our responsibility. It's the responsibility of everyone in the community to make sure that the child has everything that they need to meet those milestones, to become successful adults, and to enjoy being a child.
I've seen you on the ground over the past 3 months in Ferguson and elsewhere with this the movement and a lot of issues that have come out of that. Is there a connection to that?
Yeah, for me, there's a significant connection. When we're talking about child well-being, we're talking about health, happiness, and wholeness. We recognize that the kind of violence that we see in communities that shortens life has been declared a public health issue by the Centers for Disease Control and others, by our local children's hospitals. And so we can't talk about child well-being and we can't talk about becoming successful adults when we recognize that children are being cut off before they have that opportunity, recognizing that development goes all the way into young adulthood, and those are young adults out there that have brought us to the last 3 months.
But to kind of reiterate, though, you don't necessarily have to feel a personal connection to the last 3 months in Ferguson to be what we're talking about here tonight either. The spectrum is broader, to use a poor term, perhaps.
Absolutely. I think the spectrum is absolutely broader. We all have some way to find our role in this particular movement, as you, I think, hopefully called it in that opening segment. Some of this has to do with policies that have to do with public safety, like what we saw and what we're discussing over the last 3 months related to Ferguson. Dr. Ben Aria's presentation talked to us. He talked to us about how some of the first indicators of well-being when you ask a child from their own perspective have to do with safety. How do I feel in my neighborhood? Do I feel safe walking in my neighborhood? What is my opinion of local police? How many times do I see children being hit in school? These are all things that we can find our way into if we're engaged in the debate that's very local in our psyche, but then also very broadly when we talk about just the joy of children and what it means to make and keep them happy based upon our public policy or our personal practices.
How mature is this movement of child well-being? And I ask that because I'm curious if there's disagreement within the movement.
Well, I'll say, I mean, there's rhetorical navigation even throughout the last couple of days for those of us who are not academics but have been following, who affirm this need for wholeness for children and affirm the need for communities to center around making sure that children are well. So some of the scholars who are better prepared than I am who are on the show will talk about the transition in rhetoric from child welfare to becoming to well-being, and recognizing that it's a continuum and we're still on the journey, just like in all movements.
Is this a hard sell to the broader population? I guess children may not always have a voice to kind of advocate for themselves or even be aware of such thing as a child well-being movement.
Yeah, as Dr. Wilson said, I don't think that this is something that's a hard concept to sell. Everyone wants children happy. Kids are supposed to dance, right? They're supposed to sing. The key is, do we have the will to implement the kind of policies and go through the kind of change and how we've oriented our systems as a community and as states, as national government, if you would, federal government, if you would, in order to get to child well-being.